Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call the Richmond City Council meeting to order for Monday, June 27th, 2022. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Madam Clerk, any agenda additions or deletions?
There are none, Your Worship.
Okay, may I have a motion to resolve in the committee of the whole to hear delegations on items on the agenda? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, opposed, carried. So in terms of our sign up, I'm going to call on Roderick Lewis, who is going to delegate on item number 10, the regional growth strategy. Please come forward, sir. Have a seat.
I'm going to thank you, members of council. I'm speaking to, I believe it's item 70 or CX70, the to do with Metro Vancouver 2050 Regional Growth Strategy. I'm Roderick Lewis. I'm a resident of White Rock. There's going to be a problem if I'm required to sit down because I'm a stander. I can move. Okay, why don't I move the mic if it'll move? Is this the mic here? It looks like it's the mic. The regional growth strategy development commenced in 2019 in July. Metro Vancouver spent the following 24 months developing the draft Metro 2050 that was completed in July of 2021. During the 24 months of development, Metro Vancouver did not provide any notice to the public of what was going on. They did not invite the public's input. I know this because I submitted freedom of information requests and received responses approximately 3 weeks ago from Metro Vancouver that clearly indicate there were no advertisements in any newspapers, no advertisements on websites, no advertisements on social media or on the radio or TV. Why does this matter? Because the Local Government Act, which is the legislation that provides guidance for the development of regional growth strategies, explicitly requires that there be early and ongoing consultation with 5 separate groups. Number 1 of the named groups are the citizenry of the region. One of the other 5 is K-12 school boards. The reason I'm here tonight is to urge council members to vote against accepting the document, and instead of that to pass a motion to have a letter sent to Metro Vancouver urging or requesting Metro Vancouver will put the Metro 2050 growth strategy document back out to the public for consultation, and that in addition to that, there would be specific efforts made to consult with K-12 school boards and with the region's police departments and RCMP detachments. Why is this important? Because during the 24 months from July 19 to July 2021, when the initial draft of the document was prepared, and it's important to note that draft hardly changed one iota between July 2021 and the final document that was tabled at Metro on its March 25th meeting this year. There is no wording, there is no recommendations, no issue comment on K-12 school boards in the Metro 2050 document. And remember, this is a growth strategy, a document that's intended to guide growth. South of the Fraser, where I live, there are over 400 portable classrooms. It gets worse every year. You'd think that a regional growth strategy that has been developed through the provisions of the Local Government Act, an act that specifically requires consultation with school boards, would have some comment on school boards, school issues. Well, there's none, not a word. The same with police departments, with crime, prevention of crime, levels of crime, types of crime. One would think there would be some comments, there aren't. So the document should be put back out to the public for further consultation with special emphasis on outreach from Metro Vancouver to school boards, K-12 school parent-teacher advocacy groups, and the region's police departments. Questionnaires should be prepared by Metro Vancouver and surveys and sent to school boards, to K-12 schools, parent-teacher organizations, and to police departments across the region. And there should be invitations to meet personally for the Metro Vancouver staff, should issue invitations to meet with K-12 school boards, advocacy groups that speak for K-12 issues, as well as the police department's representatives. What's the loss of doing this? Well, there's none. There is no urgency, there's no rush, there's no irreparable harm that will befall a region or the city of Richmond or the residents or any of the business interests across the region if Metro 2050 is put back out for consultation. It's being rushed without any explanation from staff. If I had more time, I could provide more details, but it looks like I'm running down to about 15 seconds, 4 according to your clock up on the wall there. I'd be happy to take questions from anyone. I hope you have a couple of questions at least, and don't make a vote or a decision in the dark, which I, with great sympathy, am aware that occasionally councils across the region must do because of the huge agendas you have to read as part of your duties. Thank you.
All right, we have a couple of questions. Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and sharing your insight on this. First question is, you mentioned that you're from south of the Fraser. Have you made a similar pitch to your own municipality and others?
I should have included a statement on that. The Township of Langley, the City of Surrey, and the City of White Rock have all voted to not accept the Metro 2050 Regional Growth Strategy. So my answer to that question is yes. I've also made submissions to Surrey. At the most recent Metro Vancouver board meeting last Friday, I was not permitted to speak to a matter that relates to this, not directly, but indirectly. What that matter was a proposal by Metro staff to have the Metro 2050 development process submitted for an Excellence in Governance Award from the UBCM.
That was withdrawn.
It was withdrawn because fortunately there are a number of council members in cities below the Fraser River, the south of the Fraser, one of them being Kim Richter, a Township of Langley councillor, who moved a motion to remove that ridiculous proposition from staff. That's a long answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. My follow-up question is just in relation to the opposition that Surrey and White Rock have made. Is there, from my understanding, their opposition was not for the reasons that you were bringing forth today?
The reported reasons by Alex Brown of the Peace Arch News, correct. What he's put in his piece speaks more to an objective of, at least the quotes from members of council are an objective to have more power invested into the regional growth strategy so that there would be collaboration between cities that border each other in the development of urban, what do I call them, urban centers and town centers. There are numerous ones across the region where two cities share an urban center. The two Langleys are one, City of White Rock is another. And that is an issue that I at the March 25th meeting of Metro Vancouver made submissions on. Ideally, the outcome of this at the end of the end game, in my view, most constructively, would be to have a joint letter written and signed off by the two Langleys, White Rock, Surrey, Richmond, and Delta. And in that letter, outline 3 or 4, maybe 5 specific objectives that you all as cities have for an amended Metro document.
This isn't to extend your 5 minutes, okay? Just answer his questions. I'll go to Councillor Day.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming forward. Obviously, this is new to me. So my question is, you've obviously studied the process. If this was to get passed, would there not be a public process afterwards to engage in the details of the strategy?
No, that window is closed. The public hearing that occurred on April the 20th, at which time the public was invited to provide comments on the document that council now has before it. After that public hearing ended, there was a motion passed at Metro Vancouver actually prohibiting any further input to the document. So no, unfortunately not. And the 2 years that I attempted to stress as diplomatically as I could that elapsed between July of 2019, when the development of the document commenced, and July of
I
2021.
think you're now repeating what your
Okay.
submission was. Do you have another question?
May I say something? It's not a repeat in
No,
response.
No.
Of staff.
Okay, you will get to staff in due course. All right, is this a question of the delegation? All right, Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair, thanks for delegating tonight. I've made some notes about what you've said. Just one question, short answer, is other than process, do you have any substantive issues or concerns with the content of the report, other than process?
I do.
No, just a minute.
Okay.
He made his submission, and now you're asking him a completely different aspect of it.
It's in the
okay?
materials I emailed council, one of the
Okay.
attachments.
Thank you. I just did look at that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council.
All right, let's see now. We do have, at least by Zoom, we have Jerry Mulholland, who's available for questions on the Spires Road matter. Is there anybody else wanting, I think we've just have staff here tonight. Is there anyone else wanting to delegate on anything? All right, may I have a motion to rise and report? All those in favor, opposed, carried. That brings us to the consent agendas. Now, the Spires Road matter, Councillor McPhail has asked that that be removed from the consent agenda, so I'll read over the highlights of the consent agenda. Receipt of the committee minutes, the 2022 Neighborhood Celebration Grants allocation, the endorsement of the UBCM resolution for library funding. The land use application for first reading goes to public hearing on July 18th for 11460 Williams Road, rezoning from single detached RS1E to the compact single detached RC2 zone. We have the proposed Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy Bylaw 1339, 2022, Metro 2050. That was the one that the delegation was talking about. Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure application to National Trade Corridors Fund, the Municipal Access Agreement with SIC Telecom Inc., the FCM Municipal Asset Management Program grant funding application for the sanitary pump station condition assessments, 2021 Annual Water Quality Report, the Regional Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement, and finally, the award of the contract for the roll-off and in-ground container collection and recycling disposal services. May I have a motion to adopt those by general consent? So that's moved and seconded.
Question number, it's number 10, the Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy. If through the questions to staff, we discover that maybe it is something that should be referred back, does it have to come off the consent agenda now, or would we do it at that time?
It can come off now or it can come off later.
Okay.
You don't have to take it off now.
Okay, all right,
You can take it off later,
okay.
if that's the wish. Okay, so that we do have speakers on the consent agenda. I'll go to Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Worship. A number of matters on that. Just like to highlight, if I could, I'm very happy to see the neighborhood celebration grants and thank staff for the magnanimous job they did in terms of the diversity and the scope of which they awarded those grants, and also the people of Richmond that applied for those grants. It was a small amount of money that we were able to put out into them. They're very popular, but there was everything from about $345 to almost $1,800, and I think it'll just continues to show how healthy a community we have and all the great ideas. So to staff and those involved in that, kudos on that. I appreciated that as a councillor. I do wanted to mention, Your Worship, and be endorsing the UBCM resolution for funding of the libraries. I'm I'm very concerned about that, and I'm very concerned about I'm a very pro supporter, I may declare already, for libraries and library, no matter where they are. But it's, in a way, a sad commentary that we have to go and to use UBCM, that other levels of government don't see the value of libraries and communities throughout the province of British Columbia and obviously in the nation. Extremely, they're the heart and soul of everything, communication and gathering places for people and literacy and knowledge. And I can't speak enough about them. And in particular, Richmond, we're the leading edge of library services, in my opinion, in North America. And I would like to, Your Worship, and I'd like to throw it out to the library board and under advisement, whether Richmond should be funding the whole thing in terms of the library and looking, and I wrote in my notes here, looking at how we can take libraries to the next level, given what libraries will look like over the next 10 years. And are we adequately funding the libraries for the libraries we want of the future? And it's something that I'd be very, very interested in, and because we'll always have libraries, and maybe that needs to be studied on it. So I'll leave that out there. Maybe one day I may have to make a referral on that, but I know Councillor McPhail is a representative to the board, and maybe will take my comments forward as well and support what we're doing in that aspect. I do also want to give a shout out to our group on the annual water quality report. Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely fantastic report. Appreciated everything. We are cutting back on water, our most valued resource. But in that report, I think if you read it carefully, on the right-hand column, there are some little, we can call them quotes, of how you can conserve water and be more efficient. And whoever put that in the report, kudos on you. Great job. I hope the public will read those. Very, very important. Like while you're brushing your teeth and you let the water run, if you shut it off as you're brushing your teeth and then turn it back on, you will save X amount of water. Those little things, it's full of gems like that. So to our water staff and our public works people, thank you very, very much for that. I thought, Your Worship, we had our annual report in here. Do we have that somewhere? Is that
I think,
off the consent?
no, just a minute. That's past the consent, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I'll speak to that later then on it. And on the regional growth strategy, you left it on the consent. Your Worship, I have a question to you, if I may, or Harold.
Sure.
What is the procedure that brought the growth strategy to us now? Did the board of directors have any input to staff? Was there a preliminary report? How are we going now that we've got obviously a delegation, but also 3 communities of the 22 not supporting it? So I guess, I think that bears where we are today. How did it get to here?
The procedure has been, and Harold, Councillor Steves and staff can supplement this, but there was a very long process for engagement with the local governments all around the region. And that came to staff, and it came to our council that we wanted certain improvements to the growth strategy, and they were basically, well, they were accommodated, put it that way. Now, it doesn't address the point that Mr. Lewis was making that the public should be more involved, but it was a public process, put it that way. Now, once it gets to a certain point, the recommendation of the board, which was adopted, was that it should now go to the local governments for formal approval. That formal approval has to be unanimous right through the region. And so any local government that does not agree with it, they will go to, well, it'll be first of all, a mediation, then folding into an arbitration. Last time, 10 years ago, when this happened, Coquitlam was the lone dissenter, and we had to go through that procedure, and it was not a lot of fun, I can tell you. It was very divisive and frustrating, frankly, but it did get worked out. When Councillor Steves and I were at the board talking about this, I think, and Councillor Steves can speak for himself, but I think that we felt that our issues had been accommodated as we had been advised. But Surrey indicated right at the table, they were not agreeing with this. And I made the point that if we've got at least one locale that doesn't agree, why are we adopting this as a board? Why don't we try and resolve what the differences are before we have that vote? Because you're going to have rejection and going into this very divisive procedure. But in any case, the short answer is we did have input. It was accommodated. It went to the board for full ratification. The board as a whole said yes. But now there's still reluctance by 1, 2, or 3 local governments across the region, and that's going to hold up the process.
Okay, well, thank you for that thorough report, Your Worship. I guess my point, I know I was going to speak to it, we supported it at committee level, but again, we were accommodated, but we are not, I guess it concerns me very much that we already have 3 communities out of the 22 not in favor, and the second largest city in the region. And I could see why, because we need to know specifics. I guess with what they did with Campbell Valley, and Councillor Steves will probably speak to this later, what they did with the last farm that produces all our crops and what have you, and want to move that to industrial, I could see Surrey having issues, if you wish, and I don't want to speak ill of what they've done. They brought up some concerns. So I'm wondering whether we should take this off the consent agenda, but also try to find out what the issues are that are being, I believe with the consultation, that obviously is shabby. It hasn't been done well, it appears, if they haven't gone to the public. Or is it going to the public? Is that part of the process?
No, it won't be going to the public other than this is a public process.
Okay, well, maybe it's something we should be doing and making a presentation to the public here.
What we might want to do is to take it off the consent agenda, have it referred back to staff to find out what are the objections that are being raised before we, give it a final say-so.
And I would move that if we.
Well, we don't have to
get
move
right
it
off.
if, I'll take it that is the growth strategy is now off the consent, and we'll deal with it as soon as we finish with the consent
And
agenda.
if I could just wrap up on my comment on that, Your Worship. I think you and Councillor Steves come back on the growth strategy and what have you, and there's more to it than just the word growth. You come back when we're leaders in certain areas and we bring things forward and we look at sustainability, we look at our dikes, we look at but other municipalities are not following along or not even interested in certain areas. And I think we need to make those issues forward to say, hey, look, we're doing our bit here. Are you doing your bit there? Because we're only going to get there together. We're not going to get there alone. So anyhow, I'll be waiting to hear what others say. And I think we should look at maybe flushing this out to our whole community as well. Thank you.
Okay, well, that item, the growth strategy, is off the consent right now. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will be supporting all the items on the consent agenda and just want to speak to a couple of them. Number 7, the 2022 Neighborhood Celebration Grants Allocation. Thank you to staff for their work on the adjudication process for the grant allocation. And it was really wonderful to see so many great initiatives that were proposed. And I really want to thank the applicants for submitting their ideas for events that celebrate community pride, a sense of belonging, and reconnect our residents with their local neighborhoods and neighbors. And I'm really looking forward to hearing how all these events went. And I hope we get invited to a couple of them. Number 8, endorsement of UBCM resolution for library funding. Like Council McNulty, I am very concerned about the funding issues our libraries are facing, and we should all be concerned. We know that our libraries are more than just books. Our public libraries are one of the most visited destinations for children and families, making them an ideal setting to deliver community enrichment and learning opportunities. This is all stuff that we all know, but I just want to share it. Libraries are the only public spaces where people can find trusted information, community, and connection, access to art, culture, sports, games, and technology, get support for lifelong learning, health and wellness, job seeking, and career development, all free of charge. With COVID-19, libraries quickly shifted their service models and showed how important and vital they are to our community. Our public libraries need to be funded adequately, so it is important that we support a resolution to the Union of BC Municipalities to appeal for increased provincial support for our public libraries. Number 12, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure application to the National Trade Corridors Fund. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure will be conducting the Moray Bridge Area Integrated Planning Study and is requesting the city's participation and a letter of the support. The study uses the required replacement of the aging Moray Channel Bridge as a catalyst for a comprehensive transportation network study to better integrate transportation and land use planning in the area. And this really couldn't come at a better time. On June 24th, the Richmond RCMP posted a traffic alert. The Moray Bridge had suffered mechanical problems and would be out of service until further notice. Expect heavy traffic congestion. Please use alternate routes, especially if heading to the airport. This bridge was built in 1957, and periodically we know it does have shutdowns, and these shutdowns cause chaos on the transportation corridors in and out of Richmond, Sea Island, and the airport. So I'm glad that we will be participating in this and sending a letter of support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just speak to a few items that are still on the consent agenda. The first item is the Neighborhood Celebration Grant allocation, item number 7. And just to, I think, thank the staff for creating the adjudication process with the adjudication team and the adjudicator score. It seems like a fair way to distribute money using the request amounts and the amount that we had available for this celebration grant program. So kudos to them. Item number 8, that's the UBCM resolution for library funding. As a father of a 3-year-old, I've definitely used the main branch here a number of times, and it's helped our daughter find books that she likes. Otherwise, it'd be hard we would just be picking for her. But with her able to scan through and choose from the bounty of books in there, it's been great. And also I see the wear and tear that goes into books over every book that's taken out. And also the use of the space for other things that my students, and when I was a student, I used to use the library for far more than just going to get a book. Item number, moving along here, let's change numbers on me here. That was the item number 14, the FCM grant for sanitary pump station assessment. So I just highlight that we have 153, 50 have been already assessed in phase 1, and so this is going to be essential work if we get the funding for it, or we'll fund it some other way to make sure the other 103 get assessed. And finally, I do have a question to staff on item number 17. It's for the contract for GFL. So I'd asked at committee about looking into the fact that they may pay their staff at a living wage, and I was just wanted to follow up with staff if we were able to find out that information. Thanks.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Wolf, we did follow up with GFL and did send a response out to mayor and councillors earlier today, and they provided their response to that, which is that they consider they do pay a living wage to their employees, and is outlined on their information they sent to us.
Okay, thank you very much. That is all, Your Worship.
Okay, we will go to Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair, I'll just comment on two things that are on the consent agenda, and I'll be supporting all the items on the consent agenda. First is the neighborhood grant program. I too was impressed with that. It's a grassroots collection of groups that are receiving funding, and I understand it was a record number of applications that we received this year, and reading through the objectives and the eligibility requirements, it looked quite substantial. The adjudication process, I'm sure, was a lot of work, and so I just want to acknowledge the work that was done and thank staff for doing that, because it is a lot of work to go through that kind of process, and I think it was well done and much appreciated. The second item I'll comment on is the item number 9. It's the 11460 Williams rezoning. I don't often comment on these because they are usually not too controversial. I'll be supporting this one, obviously, but I think this is fairly typical of a lot of rezoning applications that I've looked at so far. And I think each one, it has to be recognized, goes towards helping the housing continuum in achieving some housing attainability for people. The issue is complex. There is no one magic solution to the housing crisis that we face, but this one is creating 2 detached homes on a major arterial, Williams, and along with that, each one will have a suite. These suites are a little bit bigger. They'll have 2 bedrooms, still a fairly small suite overall, but nevertheless, it is part of the solution that we have to work on. And I just want to acknowledge that, like many other rezoning and applications that come through, they are similar to this in that redevelopment, development, it all incrementally improves the housing continuum when you're replacing an older house with 2 detached homes, and especially when there's suites involved. So I think it helps with housing attainability, and I just wanted to point that out because there are many developments and applications that come through that achieve the same thing. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Howe.
Yes, Your Worship, since 2 items have been removed from the consent agenda, I just want to comment on 2 other items. Item number 7, 2022 Neighborhood Celebration Grants allocation. I want to thank staff for the work, and I also want to appreciate the applicants for the enthusiasm in applying and to provide neighborhood activities for the community. And I would like to congratulate those successful candidates. In the committee meeting, I mentioned that I noticed that staff will contact those applicants who are not successful this year and advise them to improve their applications in the future year. However, I also noticed that from what we saw in the report, many of the applications that were not eligible this year were due to the fact that, maybe a simple fact that the applications were being submitted by applicants of the same family. And I think this is something which is very easy to correct. So I hope that in the future year, when we see things like that, perhaps we can provide them an opportunity to amend or supplement the application so that they don't have to miss the approval and to wait for another year before they have the chance. So this is one suggestion I already made. And I also want to comment on item 12, about the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure application to National Trade Corridors Fund. As already mentioned, I think the connection between the airport and the island is very poor. And I would say that this report or this study is long overdue. And perhaps you can even say that Transportation Canada has been in negligence of improving the condition of the connection. Now, I want to ask staff, what has been the history of the connection or this study of the connection? Were there any previous occasions that this has been already studied or been any kind of proposals have been made?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, yeah, I'm not aware of all the studies that have been done in the past, but certainly sometime about 7 years ago or 8 years ago, there was some discussion about replacing the bridge at that point in time. And it kind of came and went, and it looks like they're looking to study again and move forward.
So what happened at that time? So they did a study, and then did they make any recommendations?
Last time, mostly they brought in some consulting engineers, mostly structural engineers, to talk about rebuilding the bridge and not really so much about the rest of the traffic connections or anything like that. But we did bring up other topics like the dike and flood elevations and things like that at that point in time. So hopefully they remember some of that. And as we move forward, we can get a broader traffic study out of it as well and move forward and get this thing replaced.
Very good. Hopefully this will be different this time, that they will have a study and then they will implement some recommendations to improve the connection. Thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too will be supporting everything on tonight's consent agenda. Following up on what Councillor Au was saying with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure application to National Trade Corridors Fund, it seems to me that we've talked to at least 3 MPs from Steveston Richmond East on this Moray crossing and 2 different MPs from Richmond Centre on this item. So hopefully we'll get some traction on this one and it'll move forward. I'd also like to mention number 16, the Regional Public Works Mutual Aid Agreement. This is a Metro Vancouver initiated project. And in this, it sets up a clear process and clear pricing to help out neighboring municipalities with equipment and fairly recoup the costs in the event of an emergency. So normally what would end up happening is it would have to then go to council if we're going to send help, and then how are we going to figure out pricing and this and that. And I think this makes supporting each other automatic. It makes it quick. You know, if somebody gets a big fire, if some other emergency happens, Richmond gets a bit of flooding, someone else gets a bit, we can help each other quickly, easily. We can send in the troops, our public works troops, and support each other, and then just have a straightforward way of paying the bills back and forth to each other. We've already pre-agreed to what the pricing is with each other, and I think this makes it really efficient. And it really sets us up for, if we do face emergencies, that we're in a better situation. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Day.
Oh, thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Great agenda tonight. Just for the public, this is a 564-page document, and staff have put an enormous amount of work into this, and then it's council's job to read, comprehend, and ultimately implement these agenda items. So everyone has spoken to number 7, the neighborhood celebration grants. Well, history lesson, when I was chair of the major events committee, one of my biggest pet peeves was we have to do something that brings the communities together. So the idea of the neighborhood grants was really brought to the forefront and enhanced. And the number 1 objective of the program is to provide an opportunity for groups of neighbors, artists, community champions, and community organizations to receive funding to support initiatives and activities that offer opportunities to connect residents of diverse backgrounds through shared experiences. What could be better than that? And the amounts at $74,947. And as other councillors have mentioned, it can go from $400 to $2,000. But these grants make a big difference in helping to bring our community together. Number 8 is the endorsement of UBCM resolution for libraries. You know, libraries are no longer libraries. They're basically mini community centers, and they do everything from helping people find jobs to general information. It's not just about books anymore. So working to get our share of the funding is the right thing to do. Number 9 is a single house on Williams Road, I think, that is going to be torn down and 2 houses are going to be built in its place. And sometimes I'm lukewarm about these developments, but in this case, the applicant is going to be building 2 two-bedroom suites. Given they are only 460 square feet each, but nonetheless, they are family-friendly, and that is exactly the direction we have to go in the city if we're going to address our housing crisis. The number 11 is the referral. Oh, sorry, that's off the agenda. I apologize. Councillor McPhail took that off. Number 12 is the Ministry of Transportation Infrastructure National Fund application. So the Moray Bridge is taking you from Sea Island to Richmond, all the way to 3 Road. Well, my husband used to work for Air Canada, and he got stuck at that swing bridge many a time. And given that it's built in 1957, now is the time to get our share of the $4.2 billion worth of federal funding to see if we can't upgrade or replace that corridor, which is a very important corridor. Number 14 is the FCM funding for sanitary pump upgrade. Well, it may not seem important, but these upgrades affect your quality of life. And we could get 80% funding for this, and it works out to $50,000 from UBCM. And that helps to get the projects moving forward. Number 15 is the water quality report. You know, first of all, the water in Richmond is safe and it's reliable. But if you have concerns about your water source, in particular your water meter, please call the city and ask for help, because if we have to replace one water main because of a break, it costs $100,000. So that phone call that you make can save other taxpayers and a lot of money, but it can also save you a lot of headaches. Just recently, I had a citizen contact me about a water main that had literally sunken 3 inches, 4 inches down, and so the city whipped over there, they fixed it, they raised the elevation, and we avoided a $100,000 bill. So it's your responsibility to make sure that you let us know when there's something you're concerned with. Thank you very much.
All right, so I'm going to call the question on the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. That takes us to the items which have been removed from the consent agenda. And they're all from the planning committee, so they'll be introduced by Councillor McNulty. The first one is number 10, the regional growth strategy item.
Okay, thank you, Worship. The proposed Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy bylaw, and they list it as 1339, 2022, Metro 2050. The committee recommendation was that the proposed Metro Vancouver Regional Growth Strategy bylaw, 1339, 2022, Metro 2050 be accepted, and that the Metro Vancouver Board be advised of the city's Richmond's position on the regional growth strategy. And given the discussion, Your Worship, I have trouble moving that, to be quite frank with you. I'll move it to put it on the floor and then I'll speak to it. So I'll move it to put it on the floor.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, Your Worship. Given what I've heard from the discussion of the, not just the delegation, but the lack of consultation and the process by which we do things in Richmond, I think it's important that we delve into it a little bit more. We find out why there is opposition to it at the moment with the 3 that are there before we go ahead, because those same issues may be ours. But when I look on our page CNCL 72, there are a number of things, even though many of our things have been addressed, they've been addressed because we are leaders in that area and we've already dealt with them where other communities have not. And sometimes that's one of the I would say is the downfalls of being a leader. It means you set the bar high and you hope others will follow. And obviously that's not the case when I look at the support of affordable housing, for example, and the steps that we're taking, dealing with First Nations, targets on housing and environment and what have you. You and Councillor Steves can speak on that quite easily, knowing what's going on. But when you look through the report, it's a good academic, overall, directional report, but it lacks specifics. And I think it would be worthwhile us having another look at it. And actually, even having a public workshop and an open house on it.
We can't do that.
We can't?
No, can't
No,
do
it's
that.
not our document, I guess, is it? No, okay.
So I don't think you can move referral having moved the main motion. So
No, I
does
have to,
someone-
I was hoping somebody else.
All right.
I am not going to support it. I will hope that somebody would move referral so that we can delve into it a little bit better.
All right,
Okay, I'll
we'll
let
go
others
to
speak.
Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. So when we heard about this at the planning committee, we didn't get the indication there was a lot of opposition. So I was wondering if I could ask staff, we had a delegate who came forward today who said that Surrey, Langley, and White Rock are all opposed to this growth strategy. Could you expand on that, please?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, yes, we've become aware that those 3 municipalities have officially voiced opposition to the plan. My understanding that some of the issues Part of it was triggered by the South Campbell Heights amendment that was made recently. I think there's just some issues. A lot of them are related to environmental issues that perhaps they cannot meet that are in the plan. I think a lot of our observations here in Richmond is that we're able to meet and exceed a lot of the targets that are in the plan, whereas some of these other municipalities may be challenged by it. That's part of the reason I believe that they've opposed the plan to date.
Okay, so if we were to refer this back to staff I'd like to see letters from these cities saying what they were opposed to and how can we move forward.
No, we don't need letters. We just need to have it referred to staff. They will find out the information in summary form.
Okay, all right, I can live with that.
Is that what you're moving? Are you moving
Yes.
referral?
Yes.
Is referral seconded? No, sir. No, sir. Thank you. We are not having, no, thank you. Okay, is it seconded? Okay, so referral has been moved and seconded to find out the nature of the opposition by the other cities, right? Okay, so we are now on referral. So I'll go to Councillor Steves. Did you want to mention on referral, Councillor Steves?
Yes, I want to cover a little bit about the referral is about the issue, so I'll try and work them in together. I know what has happened. This came to planning. I was the key opponent to it going ahead at planning, except from Surrey, who their delegation just didn't say anything. And I was opposed because it was so weak. They took a second look, and at that time they didn't include most of the recommendations of Richmond. They took a second look and made a lot of changes and added in what recommendations that we made. They still didn't go far enough as I was concerned. So I voted against it at planning. I got a phone call from the chair and from the CAO, and I met with them online, and they convinced me to go ahead with it. I gather that they convinced others. Others that agreed with me, if I recall right, was Langley and White Rock. The ones that were totally opposed to me was Surrey. So you got 2 points of view, and I think you'll find that Langley and White Rock are concerned that this doesn't go far enough, and you'll find that Surrey is opposed because they think it goes too far and they don't want any controls at all. So that's my guess, but I do support the referral because I think we need to find that out. When it comes back, I'm quite happy that we should pass it, because the reason I supported it when it went to the board was that in my discussion backed by the mayor of White Rock and one or two of the others, I got a commitment that after it passed, they would start looking at amendments to Metro 2050 to strengthen it and strengthen the weak spots. Weak spots, for example, 4,000 trees can be demolished in Surrey and other areas that have no tree protection at all. This is the kind of problem we've got. And so that was going to come after it passed. So it would be good to get it passed so we can start amending it. However, if it doesn't pass, we can start tomorrow amending Metro 2040. And the reason, and I'd like to add this to the referral. If staff would investigate if the other areas have voted against it, could we as a city start putting forward amendments to Metro 2040? Because according to the Metro Vancouver staff, if we pass 2050, weak as it is, with all these weak spots, we could still amend it after it passed. And it doesn't require unanimous consent. It requires 50.1%. So in other words, if we wanted to say we want the region to develop affordable housing at 15 or 20%, that would require 50% plus one. If we wanted to say there should be 2 for 1 tree replacement, there's no tree replacement at all right now, but we could put forward a motion to Metro, and each item would be individually debated, but it would only require 50.1%. So I think it's important that staff gather this information. Where is Langley and White Rock coming from? and where is Surrey coming from? Because I think they're totally two opposing positions, and I think basically it would be what I can't think of her name on the Langley rep.
Gail Martin,
No, the other person there.
Kim Richter.
Kim Richter. She was very, very, very strongly in support at planning of what I was saying, and so was the mayor of White Rock. So I suspect that that's where it's coming from. But as far as I'm concerned, we could pass it because I did get that motion that as soon as it passed, that Metro staff would start reviewing it and bringing in amendments to 2050, and then Surrey could vote for them or against them, but it would only require 50%, 1%. So that's where it's at, and staff, I think, can report back on that aspect of it as well, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, so far, the two items for the referral are to find out the nature of the opposition by other cities in the region, and secondly, to comment on the amendment procedures. All right, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I'll support it going to referral to answer those two questions. I do support the report in general. I like our staff really did a good job of all the suggestions they had made, a bunch of the changes that we're making. I agree with Councillor Steves that there's opportunity to strengthen environmental things, protect more ALR. One of the challenges, I think, has been that we can't hold certain places accountable. So we say that we have a region that agrees to a certain amount of growth, and we have Port Moody that doesn't take their fair share of growth, and then there's Surrey that takes more than their fair share of growth. So when, as a region, we're trying to plan things like enough sewage capacity for everybody to process it, to make sure that we're putting out properly treated water back out into the Salish Sea, you've got Surrey blowing past it and needing well more than they need and not having any financial accountability for that. And I think that's one of the things that has to change. Now, in terms of policing, fire, school board, those are things that react to growth, and those, so I don't see that they're actually the people that weigh in at the beginning of it, because they're the ones that are hired after the fact. And the school board gets its money from the growth to build more schools. So certainly they're aware of what's going on, but the specific growth areas in each school district happen in that city. And so those pieces all fall into place after the general growth in the region happens and each municipality takes their fair share of it.
All right, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few questions to staff, actually, in relation to the delegation that was...
This is on referral.
Yes. So to support referral or not, I'd like to know if staff can comment on the public consultation has already occurred. Has there been consultation with school district, with the RCMP? Has there been advertisements online in newspapers as far as the staff know?
That isn't on referral.
Well, maybe I don't think this needs...
It's not being referred for more public input when you have specific questions. So it's not on referral.
I'd like to add to the referral if the answer is no.
There can't be more public input, okay? That phase is gone, whether it's been done well or not.
Okay, my second question to staff, maybe I can get an answer, is if this is not opposed tonight, as opposed to referred, does Metro Vancouver treat it as a being approved? Or does it have to be opposed, or can it be referred and then opposed later? Is the decision have to come today to Metro Vancouver?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, there is a 60-day period for council to respond. There is a bit of time. The next council session is essentially when you would have to respond to. So there is a bit of time to respond to the referral.
Okay, great, thank you.
You'll make sure that you're watching that date, and we'll have a special council meeting if we have to deal with the matter. Because if we agree with it, we want to agree. But we don't want to do something by default. All right. So this is on the referral of the matter for the questions that have been raised, the matter of the opposition by other cities, and the amendment procedures. All those in favor? Any opposed? So that is carried. All right, we'll go back to Councillor McNulty on number 11.
Next item that we have is referral response on Spires Road area and the rental tenure and density increases. The Planning Committee recommendation was that the official committee plan, bylaw 7100, amendment bylaw 10190, which proposes to amend the schedule 2.10, which is the city center area plan, by designating the area bounded by Westminster Highway, Garden City, Cook Road, and Cooney Road as Urban Center T5 and sub-area B2 mixed use, mid-rise residential and limited commercial. And establishing a rental tenure overlay and supporting policies which outline the density increases associated with secured rental tenure for properties in and adjacent to Spires Road, as described in the attached report titled Referred to Response Spires Road Area Proposed Rental Tenure and Density Increases, that it be introduced and given first reading, and that the official community plan has been considered in conjunction with the financial plan and capital plans, the GVRDU, solid waste, liquid waste, and is found to be consistent with said government plans in accordance with the section of the Government Act, and it be considered in accordance with the OCP bylaw preparation consultation policy, and is hereby found not to require further consultation, and that the industry rezoning applications that are received prior to adoption of the Richmond Official Committee Plan Bylaw 7100 Amendment 10190 may be exempt from the Spires Road area market rental policy, provided the application receives first reading within 1 year of the amended bylaw being adopted and the final adoption and issuance of development permit within 1 year following the associated public hearing. And the staff will report back to council regarding key findings related to the implication updates of the city center area plan for Spires Road area after the policy provisions are in place for 1 year, and that staff be directed on an interim basis to consider development applications within the arterial road land use policy that would allow higher densities provided that all of the additional density is used for rental housing, and that this interim measure becomes a foundation for the overall policy review of the arterial road land use policy of the official committee plan targeted to review secure more rental and density on arterial road, in particular near neighborhood services and transit routes. And as chair, I would so move to put it on the floor.
So that's moved. Is it seconded? It's seconded. Okay. So it's moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. Obviously, this plan was passed unanimously or without dissension at committee. And we looked at it, and obviously there are comments were made, and staff hopefully was taking them in advisement, under advisement. And the plan needs to be looked at. I was skeptical about it, and I made my comments at committee that I felt there wasn't enough incentive there to see that we would get what we would hope our objective would be. And I think I made comments that it's great that it's a one-way street, but no developer is going to go in there given the incentive package if there is one here. And obviously, we got a letter from a longtime pioneer. I'm glad she was able to say 37 years in the area, and that we have a lot of old, longtime folks still living in that area. As a matter of fact, there are quite a few of them. And her concerns were some of mine about the change in value of home properties if we adopt this, and we hit it totally for rental without allowing any sales of market rental. And the fact that we are able to increase it and may not make it strictly townhomes, I think is a step in the right direction. So the policy has many benefits. Whether it has enough benefits to preserve the integrity of the homeowners that live in there is another thing. not everybody there, as she said, are gamblers and speculators. I'm glad she finally, I was told at council or at committee that there was nobody there that had lived there for a while, but we're finding out that people are coming out of the woodwork that have been there for a while, and not all rentals in there and flippers. There's still a very strong neighborhood community in the Spires Road area, and there always has been. Matter of fact, the backbone of the City Center Community Association, if you look at. But I didn't think, Your Worship, we would get all forms of housing on it. And I know we want to encourage development. We don't want to stagnate or kill it, but we want to have certain goals. And we can't solve the whole housing issue in one area, and I don't think that was our intention. Staff gave us their best shot at what they did and what they thought they heard from committee and council members and put it in there. So staff, thank you very much for your commitment on it. Like any policy, you can always massage it and improve it, and we want to do better, and we can do better. So, Your Worship, as chair, I gather that putting it forward on behalf of the committee when it came without dissension, I'd like to hear what the comments are and the reason why it's off the consent agenda, and see how we can improve the policy and make it better. Thank you.
Councillor McPhail. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Linda.
No.
Uh-oh.
Yes,
Okay.
good. Got it.
Okay, you're on now.
Okay, sorry, it was off. Anyways, first of all, thank you to staff for the report and all the work that they did to respond to this specific referral. And there are some things that I like about the report. I like the idea that this would be a pilot project, setting out, a new policy framework that would address some of the affordable housing issues that we're facing in the city. I support the grandfathering clause. And I also think that it's really important that staff will get the data and report back to council in 1 year with the key findings. And I do have a lot of questions. I did not attend planning, but I did review the YouTube video. So question, with the estimated additional 1,600 to 2,100 units that would be home to an estimated population of 3,400 to 4,200 residents, if this was to proceed, what are the requirements that the city consult with the school board? There will be families moving in, there will be children. So Cook Elementary is the neighborhood school, and I believe the school already has a population of over 500 students. So the school district will need to see if they can handle more students. Their long-range planning is done on the current OCP, I believe. And so I know it's not our responsibility directly, but we do want to build sustainable, family-friendly neighborhoods that have
let's get the
access
answer.
to amenities like schools.
Let's get the answer. What
All right,
about the school
thank you.
board?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor McPhail, we have actually spoke with the school board staff about this proposed policy. It's one of these things where we'll be monitoring it, and for every application that does come forward, we will be then forwarding it to the school board. Basically, each application will have a different impact on the schools. So for now, it's essentially having the school board kind of aware of the policy at the moment, and we'll assess the impacts through each development application.
All right, thank you. And what is the estimated population in the area now?
I believe through your worship to Councillor McPhail, I believe the estimated population is approximately 2,400 people. Oh, sorry, not currently. That's under the current policy. The maximum population would be about 2,400. I believe the current population would be around 1,200 people.
Okay, so that's a huge jump in population going from currently 1,200, 2,400 is allowable under the current OCP. If this was to go ahead, we could get 3,400 to 4,200 people. So green space, I know this was a question that was asked at planning, and in the correspondence from Paige Robertson, which we received today via email from staff, she notes, it is documented that the city center of Richmond is lacking green space. How is the requirement for additional space being addressed, and can staff speak to that?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor McPhail, the Spires Road Area Plan maintains the current park designation at the moment. There are no changes. Staff are responding, obviously, to a specific referral that relates to the amount of rental units in the Spires Road area. Staff will monitor the impacts, just like the school board will monitor the impacts to park space with each development application. And as part of the OCP review, staff will also be reviewing park standards within the city centre.
Okay, that leads to my next question, and it is about the OCP review, which is underway. In the normal course of events, would the Spires Road area have been reviewed? And then, because I think we're putting the cart before the horse, if we're going to be looking at the green space after, anyways, that's just my initial thought. So would this have, if we didn't have this referral and the OCP review is underway, the Spires Road area would have been reviewed in the normal process?
Through your worship to Councillor McPhail, yes, that is correct.
All right, thank you. So I think that the staff recommendations for this form of development are appropriate, providing opportunities for a mix of low, mid, and high-rise building forms at varying densities in proximity to the Richmond Brick House Canada line, I think is good. But this could equally be applied to other areas of Richmond, so why stop here? I believe there needs to be a full review of what the city is trying to accomplish for the whole of Richmond, and we need to look at it in that context, you know. So, and there are some other things that concern me. The economic climate has changed dramatically over the last little while. We've heard from the development industry, they're running into constraints. We've heard about the lack of skilled workers, rising building material prices, supply chain issues, rising interest prices, and the cost of land. So are we going to have developers even build these? So I also think we need more public consultation. While we've heard from some of the residents in the Spires Road areas, I believe we need to hear from the broader area who would be impacted by this change. And the report states that the primary intention of the proposed policy is to dramatically increase the number of rental units within the Spires Road area by increasing residential density. So again, I ask that, are there enough incentives? I know this has been spoken about, but are there enough incentives for developers? We know that building rental is not in everybody's scope of business. So I think we are rushing on this OCP amendment. I think we should develop options for a given area in the context of the overall vision for the city. I think we need time to do a deeper dive of this area and other areas within the OCP in the review that's underway right now. And I would entertain a motion to refer this to the OCP process, if that's appropriate later, Your Worship.
We'll come back to you.
Yeah.
The extra one FAR, that's optional, isn't it?
To your worship, that's one, it was the additional
Right,
FAR.
that's what I mean.
That would
The
be
one-
optional, that's correct.
Right. So they can, someone developing can use the existing guidelines, right?
To your worship, there would be a minimum density of 2 FAR. So
Right.
currently, the maximum is 1.2 FAR, so it would increase the,
Okay, so it does increase that. Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few comments. I don't have any questions of staff. I did attend the planning meeting and I did make a number of comments and ask questions then. So just in brief, in addition to those comments, I just went past the site and did observe the 3 developments that have been allowed by this council in the last few years, which I was opposed to for some of the reasons that were just mentioned by previous 2 councillors. And were also highlighted in this letter from a resident. The number 1, the lack of green space, the fact that we don't have that designated park, one space or multiple spaces predetermined. Instead, we're just letting developers come in, develop different areas, and then what's left over, if it's green, if not, we'll put some small trees in its place. But we're not preserving any of the existing features. We're unlikely to preserve any of the soil that has deep roots or the ability to grow deep roots as well. So I think it's outlined very well in the staff report that there's this referral from planning, which again, I'm not a member of planning, so I couldn't modify the referral, but I think the referral was lacking some other concepts like looking into the park space, like giving the option of staff to comment on 100% rental tenure option. Instead, we've got the option 1 and 2 that are in this report that don't go far enough, and I was unable to make amendments to it at that time. And then the other thing in this letter from the resident highlights the fact that they feel that certain homeowners are going to get handpicked and some will be under certain type of zoning and certain type of development, and then the neighbors won't. They'll be under something different. Again, I think to address that, you treat the whole Spires Road area under that blanket rental tenure option, which will also prevent the rising land value that's going to occur once you get condo, strata condo or luxury townhouses being developed, like the 3 developments in there right now, I would consider. And then in addition to that, if there is a referral a little bit later, as I think it's going to be in regards to sending this to the OCP process, which is later on, I actually, I value that, but I also object to it because the fact that there's likely going to be more development proposals made in the short term, I think that at least if this does get adopted, it will require funding in lieu. If those developments do get passed by the majority on council, at least there'll be more funding to put towards rental to put somewhere later on. I don't think it's the best case scenario out of this, but I think getting what staff have put into the wording in response to this council's referral, I think it is somewhat as best as we can get today. But through the OCP process, we can add those stricter uses, and hopefully there won't be too many developments like we've seen until then. Thank you.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I have a question here. On the bottom of CNCL 222, the final paragraph says, for projects that create less than 60 strata units, cash in lieu would be collected as part of the LEMUR contribution. But in this proposal, aren't we suggesting that no matter what size it is, unless it's less than 3 units, like a 3-unit thing, then you're going to actually provide the affordable housing, or you're not?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, the affordable housing component is applied to the strata component of the development. So if there's a strata component, 1.2 FAR is the maximum. We would be applying the 15% market rental policy that was recently adopted by council and the 15% LEMUR requirement on that strata component.
On the cost.
The 0.8 rental component that's added to this policy is required regardless of the size of the application.
Okay, so you're going to jack up the strata by that $30 a square foot for an apartment, plus try and get the builder to also build 20% market rental and 20% affordable housing.
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, just to clarify, so if the development is more than 60 units.
Right, which isn't going to happen here because they're not going to be able to assemble that many. So like on any of the ones we've seen so far, what was the last project? 33 units or something?
33. And
So 33 units. So let's round it up to 40 to make it easier for numbers, right? But so 60% of that, so 24 of those units would be strata. On all 24 of those units, you're going to increase their cost by $30 a square foot to go into the cash in lieu.
Correct.
And then you're going to get them to grow 8 affordable housing units and 8 market rental units.
Correct.
Whereas if they just built anywhere else in the city, they could take that 40 units, they would only have to do 15% of each of those 2 things, right? So.
Correct.
Whatever, 4.5, like you're asking for 20% plus the floor, whereas the other one, because they're actually providing the affordable housing, they don't have to pay that extra $30. So you're jacking up the price of the strata units and trying to get them to build this. And we've already decided that asking for 15%, so 70% strata, 15% affordable housing, 15% market is like pushing the envelope actually for the builders. So now we're actually saying we're going to push it to 20%, 20%, and hit you with the affordable housing. So
Joe
it's
Ursig
totally
wants
unaffordable.
to make a comment. Go ahead, Joe.
Your Worship, I think in the context of some of these concerns, it's important to remember where this came from. This was a referral to staff with a specific direction to be creative and aggressive about generating additional density and additional rental housing. So it was in that context. Staff aren't trying to jack up anything. What we have done is we've worked through the referral and the technical land use aspects, and we've put a proposal before you for changes to the area plan. The developments that may occur under this new plan, if it's approved, there are going to be all sorts of limitations. So we can't guess how many units will or won't be in a development. But to the issue of cost and viability, we specifically brought in a qualified external land economist to ensure that, based on the best professional knowledge of today, the development that's being recommended to you is viable. And so while this area may cost more or less than developing in some other areas, the real issue from staff's point of view is that the policy that we're bringing you still provides for viable development in the market. So we're pretty confident that's the case based on Mr. Mulholland's recommendations. And what we're doing here is responding to a very specific referral to staff.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I have Councillor Day. Haven't you already spoken? No? Go ahead.
We had a very robust conversation, and thank you, Mr. Hopkins, for this amazing report, and thank you to Mr. Mulholland for the amazing report that he also did. Could I ask Mr. Ursig to expand on one other thing? After our very robust conversation, we made another referral, and could you talk about that referral? Because it's related directly to this.
Through your worship, there was a referral from committee for staff to look at areas, neighbourhoods where we could apply 100% rental tenure zoning. So, of course, we will work with that referral and respond in due course. I might note, though, that Council has already effectively placed 100% rental tenure zoning on 60 sites throughout the city of Richmond. So I think you've already done more than most, perhaps more than anybody out there, but we will be looking under the referral at additional opportunities to use rental tenure zoning for 100% rental precincts.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that, Mr. Ursig, because as the letter writer wrote, she thought that they were being basically chosen or singled out for this, and that's just not the case. The housing crisis has dictated that we have to look at every viable option for more affordable housing, rental housing, and just something that people can afford to get into. I think the number one question that we asked of staff during the council Planning Committee recommendation was, is this as good as it gets? And as Mr. Ursig just pointed out, according to the report by Mr. Mulholland, this is doable, this is viable. And so if there is a referral to refer it back, I'm not going to support that, because if staff would, or sorry, if council would just refer to page CNCL 230, there is a map of the Spires area. And there are already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 developments. If we don't get going on this, if we wait another 2 years, it's going to be too late. And I appreciate the concerns, especially of the councillors who weren't at the meeting, that may have missed the intent of this, which is to try to get on top of this before it's too late. This area, the Spires area, is extremely unique because it's only a block or so away from rapid transit. And so there could be all kinds of concessions concessions made for the developers to make it more viable, such as allowing for less parking. And the other thing that we learned from the consultant, Mr. Mulholland, and was that these properties, because of their location, are worth $10 to $11.5 million an acre. I mean, there's a lot of room for wiggle room here. So while the writer of the letter is concerned about, not making as much money, I really don't see that being a problem because of the extremely high values of property in the area. The other thing I wanted to look at was there's a graph which we did not get in our original report, but it's in tonight's report. It's on page CNCL 215, and it's a really good graph that Mr. Hopkins created that really shows the options for the developer. So if they choose to take advantage of the increased density, there are restrictions, of course, but it also is a significant difference in density. That's what makes this proposal viable. Now, everyone, I'm sure here would agree that the OCP can't be reviewed fast enough, but those things take time. And in the meantime, how many more lost opportunities do we want to have? So I think that we should support this today. Vote for it. We can always amend it if in a year's time we decide that, maybe that doesn't go far enough or it goes too far, we can make changes. But let's not let this slip through our fingers. And like I said earlier, the map on 230 really shows if we don't get going now, it's going to be too late. Thank you very much, Mayor Brody.
Councillor Hobbs?
Thank you, and through the chair. First of all, thank you to staff for the report. It is quite comprehensive, and I know it was done at the request of a referral. At planning, I did vote for it. It was a close call in my mind, and I expressed some concerns there, and I'm going to make a couple comments and have a couple questions for staff through the chair. Thank you. First of all, there are things about this that I like as well. I do like the grandfathering clause, which makes sense and is kind of a historical precedent in Richmond and other communities as well. I like the fact that it's a pilot project. I like the fact that it will be reviewed after 1 year. I do have some concerns about the way planning seems to be happening in some cases in response to referrals. And we do have an OCP review underway right now. So can you just, staff, tell me and the public, what's the timeline for that? We're doing things now, and when would we expect that OCP review to be completed?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, right at the moment, we're in the process of the first phase of the OCP review, which is really a context analysis and a lot research-based analysis. We intend to bring forward a report to council by the end of the year that would summarize the research and provide some preliminary policy steps that we can take out and review with the public in 2023. Following that consultation, we would be bringing forward a revised OCP or a first draft of it towards the end of 2023. In the interim, as when we respect the fact that affordable housing is a significant issue right now, that we will be bringing forward policy amendments, sooner rather than later, and not waiting for a full package or to wait in 1 or 2 years, but to bring forward policy amendments when they are, when we feel that the research and the rigor has been done.
Sure, thanks. And I will have some other questions, but for me, I do like comprehensive planning when it can be done. I have no trouble doing immediate action plans when exigent circumstances exist, but generally speaking, I think in terms of planning for a city, that's really not the case. So I do think that I would favor this being looked at in the context of the entire OCP. Not that it's necessarily a bad thing, that's what's been proposed, but I do have some other concerns, for instance, with the green space, which has already been talked about, schools, the lack of commercial services right in the immediate plan area, and for instance, the transit solutions that might be there. But let me just ask a couple of questions as well. When we set a minimum FAR, and in this case it's 2.0, going from 1.2, adding 0.8, which is going to be split between lemur rental and market rental, taking it up to 2.0, it could go higher, but 2.0 will be the minimum. Is that a very common practice in the city, setting a minimum FAR for anybody? Because usually I hear people trying to get the maximum FAR, and that's the limitation you have to deal with. This is a minimum FAR, and it kind of reminds me of the land use contracts that we dealt with throughout the city and say in Westwind, where the land use contract, I think, was brought in for various reasons. But one reason back in the day was to prevent people from building something too small in an area where they wanted quite nice houses built. And the only limitation was the height. And so that's how you ended up with some three-story houses. So unintended consequences. So the question was, are there other places that have a minimum FAR? Is that common or is this unusual?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, this is a new approach. I would say a somewhat innovative approach that hasn't been used elsewhere. Minimum FARs have been used for commercial developments in other municipalities. I believe Richmond has done that from time to time, where you want a minimum commercial development to ensure that there's something substantial. For residential, you are correct that we used to have minimum house sizes back in the day, and that's so this is a sort of a new innovative way of trying to raise the bar for residential development, provided that there's substantial rental included.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with being new and creative and innovative. I think we're all in favor of that. But that does lend itself to my leaning towards that being part of a comprehensive review for the city plan, because this might be applied in different areas. So one other question is the issue of having 2.0, if somebody had something happen to an existing house there, for instance, or an existing duplex that was built to 1.2, for instance, or a house that is 0.55 or whatever it is, could they rebuild that if this is passed, or would they be subject to the 2.0 regulation?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, they could rebuild under the existing zoning. Most of those lots are single family, so they could build under their existing zoning rights.
Sure. And I'm probably running out of time. I'll look for the nod from your worship. But under this 2.0, if you have an odd-shaped site or a site that doesn't quite meet the setbacks and everything else, would you be able to necessarily do 2.0 in all sites if you didn't have the right land assembly?
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, that we certainly would work with applicants who are assembling land to ensure that there are no orphaned lots or limited orphaned lots. If there happens to be a couple of lots that are odd shaped and it's difficult to build a 2.0 development site, we could bring forward something to council that would look at amending the policy if we felt that, you know, through the merits of that development application it was warranted, rather than having those lots basically sit and not have the ability to redevelop.
Sure, that's good to hear. I'm probably running out of time, so I think I'll leave it with one last question, and that is, there's much made of the Rolo report and the economic analysis on that, but when I read it, it's pretty tight. I think the margins are pretty tight. And usually when you're looking at data tends to be dated to some degree. So since March of this year, there's been many kind of quakes in our economic system all around the world, not just here. And maybe he's online, but are those numbers recent? Do they take into account the inflation rates that we're seeing now, the interest rate changes, the cost of construction materials, and that type of thing? Are they current numbers? Because something tells me that the numbers are probably a little bit older than 3 or 4 months.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, they're relatively recent numbers within the last 6 months. So certainly they may not be taking into account some recent events that are going on at the moment, but there is a bit of room within the pro formas to ensure that there's a bit of flexibility. Certainly some property owners might struggle more than others. It really depends on when land was purchased and other sort of development requirements. We will definitely monitor that, and that's one of the reasons why we'd be reporting back within a year's time. If we feel things have changed substantially, we could report back to council even sooner.
Yeah, and if the mayor would indulge me, one last question. Just
Another last question?
Yeah, it's
Let's move it along.
It's my second last question. Just the sorry. Oh, okay. I'll leave it at that then. Thank you, Your Worship.
Was your last question? Councillor Steves, Harold.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say I support the report and I support going ahead with it. I think this is what we asked for, and it's very, very well thought out. And as I said at committee, and I've said it 2 or 3 other times in the last month, no matter what you do, wherever it is in Richmond, if you try to densify, increase affordable housing, rental housing, whatever it is, you're going to get opposition. And to leave it to the OCP, this area it may be too late by the time it gets back, because while we get a first report in the OCP at the end of the year, and then you bring it in a year from now, it may be referred for another year. And so we keep losing time, we keep losing opportunities. And I think when we have an opportunity, that's the time to act, and that's now. So I think we should go ahead with this. I think it's an excellent opportunity. Yes, it's economically it's tight, but certainly I think it's worth doing, and I think it will. The value of the $11 million for an acre should impress anybody that's there that they're not going to lose their shirt if we go ahead with this and have some requirements to change the way we're doing things at present. And I keep reminding people, this is how we got the 702 process. All the houses from Steveston Highway to Terra Nova are frozen into large mega mansions because the people there objected, and we backed down and didn't densify. We didn't put in secondary suites. We didn't put in smaller lots. Same thing with, and Bill will remember this because it was when Ani and we could have put rental apartments, and I was the one that was leading it, and I backed down, and that killed it. And it goes on and on and on. So sooner or later, it's all great to talk about how you're going to do these things, but it's bloody well awful. It's time that we started doing them, and I think that's the problem. We keep saying, yeah, we're going to do this, and then somebody says, boo, we turn around and run and hide. So I think it's time to get it done.
Okay, Councillor Rao.
Yes, Worship, I think it's important to look at, as staff already mentioned, this is a response from staff to a very specific referral. And I think that was a good reason for us to make that referral in the first place, which is, for one, we have a housing crisis problem. And secondly, this is a big area, and also this area is very unique. So I think it provides an opportunity for us to move forward with something innovative and something that can be a template, for other areas. We had a very thorough discussion in the planning committee meeting, and I would suggest that if we are delayed moving forward, we will not know what will be the opportunities that we may lose because of the delay. So I would prefer that we move forward and go to the next stage, which is public hearing, and then people can still give the feedback to us. But I want to ask the staff a question. Now, in attachment 8, staff talk about, the consultation policy, and then, what we have already consulted. How about the building community? Have we get any general feedback from the building community, the developers, generally on this report?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Au, we've had discussions with certainly inquirers of land in Spires Road. We've also we have one application that's in stream at the moment. We've had discussions with that applicant as well, and we'll be presenting to UDI actually this week, assuming that the bylaw is forwarded to public hearing. So we would get response from UDI prior to the public hearing.
But what is your general sense right now, from the building community?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Au, I'm finding that there is support. What it does mean, though, is a different type of builder will have to come into Spires Road. Right now, it's currently townhouse builders, and some of those development businesses may not be in the market of building low-rise or low to mid-rise, so it will probably take a different type of builder to come in and make it work compared to the builders that are in there now.
Okay, thank you. So I think this is not perfect, but I think we should move forward. And I think some of the questions being raised, such as the lack of green space, can be addressed when we are actually considering or to approve future applications. So I would support that we move forward rather than refer this back.
Okay, now, Councillor McNulty, you've already spoken.
I'd like to close debate on it and ask a question.
No. If we're ready, we go back to Councillor McPhail, who wants to move a referral motion.
Well, I'd like to ask staff a question.
Go ahead.
if we don't pass this, what is the prognosis for Spires Road? Is it zone townhouse, right?
Through your
So we're going to get more what's there.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay, so, and how long do you think we would have any action in terms of the OCP? The last time we did it, it took us 2 years to get it to, we're not doing the OCP on Spires Road. We're doing the OCP on the whole Lulusi Island and 21 islands. Correct? So therefore, it isn't going to happen at your answer and your response. I was sort of perked my head up. Councillor Stevenson, I know what we did before, so I'm curious. So it could be probably 3 to 5 years before any action takes place in that area.
Potentially.
Potentially. Thank you very much. That's it. Okay.
All right, I'm going to go back to Councillor McPhail. You wanted to make a motion of referral?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to refer the referral response Spires Road area proposed rental tenure and density increases to the OCP review. And if there's a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Is there a seconder? Okay, so that's moved and seconded. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, I think, we are doubling or potentially tripling the population in this area, and I think we need a plan for the green space. I don't think it's good enough to just watch and adjust as we go along. I think we need a more fulsome plan for all of Richmond. I think we definitely need more community consultation. There will be areas around this quarter acre or the section that will be impacted by the higher density, and we need to hear from them. I think we're trying to fix a very complex issue with a quick fix, which may not get what we want anyways. I think our best option for a comprehensive plan for the city of Richmond is to look at our affordable housing and look at it in the view of the city, of what we want as a city and areas where this could happen throughout the city. Because there's not one area. There's not just one area. I think this could happen in other areas of the city. Thank you.
All right, other speakers on the referral? Councillor Day.
Thank you. Yeah, I won't be supporting the referral because time is a waste, and we've, as Councillor Steve said, let's get on with it. If we look to the east off of Cook Road and Garden City, high-rise apartments. If we look to the north off of Westminster Highway, mid-rise apartments. If we look to the west of the Spires Road area, high-rise apartments. If we look to the south, the same thing. This fits the area, and we should move forward. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to support this referral. I would support a referral that would come back more quickly in due course. If we're worried about consultation, if we're worried about whether we have the latest costs, whether we have the appropriate green space, probably the school issue will take care of itself. But I don't think we can wait for years on this. We can wait for months, but not years. And that ship is going to sail if we want to do something in this particular area. Yeah, if time wasn't a factor, I would say yes. It is more properly part of the OCP review process. We just don't have the luxury of that time. So I'm not going to support this referral as it's on the floor. But I would support something with a shorter time. Councillor McNulty, on referral.
We aren't supporting the referral either. This was my motion.
Can't hear him.
Sorry. Please start again.
I won't be supporting a referral either, Your Worship. This was a motion I brought forward with regard to the Spires Road increasing density, given that we have towers all around it. We have 8-story buildings all around it, et cetera. And this is an area where if we're going to, I don't necessarily agree with all the aspects of the report, but those can be modified. But I think we need to be progressive and look at our goals. We talk about putting 60,000 people in the downtown core, utilizing transit and that in the city center. And this is a place that needs it. When I look at the townhouse developments there, I'm sorry, It's not exactly what I want to see. It's a whole area of townhouses down there in already multi-family or density buildings where you've got 14-story towers all around it, as was mentioned, across the Garden City. You got north, you got down the road, et cetera, and we're going to put 3-story townhomes in there. And it's going to take us 5 years to change it. In the meantime, it'll be built up. So I think it's not looking at it in the right way. Density's all around it. This is one of the last areas eventually. No, it's not going to be developed tomorrow, but we do have to have a plan. And if somebody wants to do it, and we have to respect the homeowners in there too, and the value of their properties. In many cases, many of them as their livelihood. They've taken 35 years to pay off their mortgages, et cetera. They deserve to have the area developed. So we said we would increase density in the downtown core. This is just one of the areas. Yes, there are issues, and I think they need to be addressed. However, if we're really committed and we're thinking we want to get some affordable housing, I haven't heard a solution tonight of somewhere coming up and saying, let's develop this so we can get it. This is not what I call the best, but it's a step in the right direction, and I think we have to take many steps in the right direction in Richmond to look at market rental and all forms of rental within it. So I won't be supporting the referral, Your Worship. I'll be supporting the policy as it stands.
All right, with that, we're going to call the question. So this is on the referral to go to be part of the OCP review process. Those in favor? Those opposed? That is defeated. It was Councillor McPhail, Councillor Hobbs voting in favor of it. Everyone else voted against it. So, referral having been defeated, we'll go back to the main motion. And I'll ask all those in favor. Those opposed. Councillor McPhail. So it is carried with Councillor McPhail opposed. All right, so that brings us to the third item that was taken off the consent agenda, and that is the Dyke Road, it's Graybar Road. Councillor McPhail.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will excuse myself. My husband is the applicant.
Okay. So, Councillor McNulty.
Thank you,
Introduce
Your
it.
Worship. I'm going to, I guess I have to read the whole thing, don't I?
No, you can just refer to
I'd like
what's
to,
on the
yeah.
agenda.
Your Worship, I'll just paraphrase the top and read the statute. It's an application by Farrell Estates for rezoning at Graybar Road, Dyke Road, and Lot 9 in East Richmond, next to Hamilton. And the Planning Committee recommendation was that the rezoning of bylaw 8500 and the amendment 10336 to create the Industrial Business Park and Marina Z 120 Graybar Road, Richmond East Zone, and create the Zone 6831 Graybar Road, 2455 Dyke Road, 2911 Dyke Road, 7500 number 9 Road, Lot A, Block 4 North Plan, EPP 113-853, Section 9, Range 4 West, New Westminster Land District in Section 161720, PID 031553-231, and a portion of Graybar Road from the Industrial Marinas Z117, Graybar Road, East Richmond, Industrial Park IB1, and Light Industrial IL zones to the Industrial Park and Marina Z120, Graybar Road, East Richmond zone, be introduced and given first reading. And we discharge the land use contract 127 entered in and to pursuant to Farrell Estates land use contract bylaw 3613 RD 8596-2 from the title of 6831 Graybar Road, be introduced and give first reading, and I would so move.
Moved and seconded. Go ahead. Did you want to comment?
I
on
don't
that?
want to comment, Your Worship. It's straightforward. It's a switch in land use out there. Nothing will be disturbed. The people that have businesses there and various boats moored or on dry dock, I should say, they will all be accommodated for, and it's just to redo it so that it will better serve the people that it's serving now. So that's all I have to say.
All right, Counselor Day.
Thank you, Mayor Brody. This project is actually 5 phases, and we're only dealing with the first 2 today. When it is built out, it will eliminate the marina operation to the degree that it is today. This phase 1 and phase 2 would allow for 800 square feet of commercial space. And anyone who's got any connections to the marine industry knows how hard it is to find marine space and a place to operate a marine business. I've actually been in this marina many, many times before. I was a counselor, as a sign maker, and I know there's a lot of small business owners that work in this area. So that's part of my concern. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is there are about 100 trees that are going to be lost, and this is just east of an agricultural area. So I'm concerned about the effect on the environment. It'll also displace the businesses that are on the north end. They're going to try to move the businesses. Mr. McPhail said that they would simply move everybody on the north side of the property to inside the property. So somebody else would have to be moved to make room for their businesses to be moved. The other concern that I have is that currently there are structures, be it that they are temporary structures, but they're on City of Richmond land. And so rather than having those moved off of City of Richmond land, we're going to lease them the land. And that seems like preferential treatment to this developer. And the other option, or the other requirement, is there's going to be 13,300 square feet purchased from the City of Richmond, and then there's a CN right-of-way. So this whole plan just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like it's a situation where, the developer has strong, connections to the city, and I think we could do better on this project. I think that maintaining the marine uses and not putting in 181,000 square feet of commercial would actually better benefit the industry, and so I'm just a little queasy about this development.
I just want to say how inappropriate some of those remarks were in terms of what is being applied for and the motivations of the applicant and the possible involvement of our staff. The obvious implication was that there's preferential treatment being given here. I don't think for a minute that is the case. I think that the report, as we will discuss it, will speak for itself. And I think I would call upon Councillor Day to remove or retract those remarks.
More details of some of the things that I was
No,
concerned
no,
about.
I don't want you to go into more details.
Okay,
You have impugned the motivation of our city staff and the applicant. And now maybe you didn't communicate that the way you meant it.
Okay, if that was taken the wrong way, Mayor Brody, I apologize. What I would like to say is that this is a really complicated project, and there is so many pieces of it that I'm uncomfortable with. And so I would like to make a motion to refer this back to make it more in line with what's there now. I think that maintaining the marine industry is of critical importance, given that
No,
we're an
I'm
island.
not asking for another speech. If you want to make a motion of referral, you can do so in due course.
Thank you.
We have other speakers. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Well, I want to thank staff again for a very comprehensive and detailed report. It was very thorough. I had a couple conversations with staff, and I appreciated the clarification they provided on a couple points. In reading the report, I thought it was actually quite straightforward. And I think that what it does in its most basic interpretation is it combines three areas of a contiguous site, and you can look at that on page 336, into a new site-specific industrial business park and marina. And that will allow for multi-phase light industrial development to take place. So on attachment 8 on page 352, I think it's important to just note for the public that there are 7 pages and scores of rezoning requirements that the applicant has to make. It's actually hard to comprehend it all when you read it because it is quite extensive. And I just want to mention a couple of highlights from this report that I thought were quite interesting and sometimes remarkable. The ALR that buffers it on, I believe it's the west side, there'll be a 5-meter buffer zone with landscaping. This is all paid for by the applicant, I believe. There'll be a 3-meter wide pedestrian walkway between McMillan and the dike. And that didn't actually exist in the public domain, I don't think. I think it was something that they just did, and now they've agreed to do it in a formal way. 110 trees are being replaced at a 2-to-1 ratio. And according to the tree bylaw, if you read it, there's a minimum size for trees. And so those will be quite significant trees that are going in. There's almost $50,000 going towards public art. There's 12 EV charging stations going in. And through the different phases of development, there'll be 60 in total. There's rooftop solar panels going in on the buildings that the landlord will be using and the common areas. And conduits and rough-ins will be done for all future buildings if tenants want to install solar panels as well. The buildings itself exceed the code in terms of energy efficiency by 10%. So they exceed the code by 10%. That's pretty significant. There's a whole number of other things that are going to happen, new sidewalks, dike improvements. And one thing I'd like to point out as the last point, in the Metro Vancouver report, which we did not accept tonight, but the Growth Strategy 2050, this fits in exactly with that growth strategy. If you look at 2.2 in that 2050 report, it says, and I'm quoting this, protect the supply and enhance the efficient use of industrial land. That's exactly what this proposal does. And just for everybody's information, we talk a lot about agricultural land, which I'm a big supporter of, but what people might not realize is there's quite a critical shortage of industrial land as well in Metro Vancouver, and that's very important for our economy. So this proposal enhances a site that is already industrial. It doesn't change its use whatsoever. It combines 3 separate areas now into one contiguous site, and I thought it was an excellent report, very well done. Thank you, staff. And I'll be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few comments on this item. I did listen intently to the discussion at planning. Yeah, I have lots of concerns with this development. I'll entertain a referral motion that's coming later. As I think there is definitely improvements that could be made. And so I'll just highlight, first off, something that shocked me that was just said by someone recently was that nothing will be disturbed when it comes to this development. I see a whole lot of disturbance. And this is an area very close to where I live, very close to an area I cycle with my daughter on a weekly basis. And I walk frequently, and I've used many of the businesses directly and going to pick up boats with other people as well. On these properties. And I've brought this up with some other Hamilton residents and East Richmond residents. And I'll just highlight a few of the concerns that I have. I think the big disturbance here is there's 100 trees that will be removed. We're looking at basically a proposal that has 114 trees on site, and they want to remove 100 of them. And then there's trees on adjacent properties, I'm aware, and neighboring properties, and they're going to be, some of them will be protected. Some will be removed, and some will be moved. But the loss of those 100 trees, I think the best page to see them, there's a satellite image on page 337. It's basically the only trees on this whole map in this whole area. And there's 2 areas of trees. One is I think this isn't straight, flat property. It's kind of a diagonal property. So I'd say like the northwest edge of this property is the CN rail right away, and it's actually used regularly for people who work in this area for their lunch break, to go away from the smells of the industrial work, away from the intense sounds that they've been subjected to. And it's nicely shaded, and it's a great place where people will stop and eat, have their picnic lunch, or just try and get away from things for a little bit. And then there's the whole row of trees on, I'd say, the southeast side of the property, which is the side facing Dyke Road. And these are magnificent mature trees. We're on day 2 of an extreme heat wave, and it sure was nice to seek out some shade on a day like this. And then you just have to look across the south arm of the Fraser River on this map, and you see Dawn and Lion Islands that are fully treed and environmentally sensitive habitat. And there's a lot of continuity between that land and the trees on this property. We see in other areas of Richmond where there's trees along the dike, we remove them all because they could compromise the dike, and they could fall over and poke a hole in the dike, and then in comes the water. Where the trees on this property, they're not like that. They're on the land side of the ditch. So this is exactly, a few years ago, this is exactly the type of trees that staff were saying we could look into saving, because the ones along the dike, the riprap that need to be replaced, those ones got to go when we raise the dike. But these ones have the potential to be preserved. And if developers and the city continue to remove trees, as we need to do for dike raising, then we need to take all measures to provide habitat compensation. And I think this is one of those places where habitat compensation on the city's behalf needs to come in. And so just to say that there's no disturbance here, it's completely the other way. And then I'll just end by saying some of the positives that were highlighted, some of the additional features that will be added to the rooftop, some of the connectivity between McMillan Road, to be able to get to the dike. I would appreciate that, and many of the cyclists and others would use those other detour routes. And I think there's great ideas that have come into this development. And the fact that many local residents would be very concerned if Tugboat Annie's were closed up and it's not considered part of this development, and hopefully wouldn't be impacted too heavily by it. But many people say there's so few services out in East Richmond and Hamilton that this would be a potential hit to one of the few areas left that they can frequent. And so I'll leave it at that, and I'll see what the referral is a little bit later. Thanks.
All right, so we'll go back to Councillor Day. You want to refer this back?
To maintain the marina, and I just refer to page 337 and 343 as the contrast between what is now and what is proposed. It's a significant difference. 337 is the existing marine boatyard, and 343 is the 5-building build-out that will eventually happen, which would completely change this piece of property. It's waterfront, and I think it's important. I can go into some of the more details if I get a seconder.
So it's moved and seconded.
Yeah, so on page CNCL 330, it says that the existing boatyard would remain in the interim,
This
not in
is
the
on
long run.
merits of referral.
Yeah, the reason I'm referring it back is because this valuable resource, which is a boatyard and repair facility, would eventually be evaporated, because the existing boatyard is only going to stay there in the interim while buildings 1 and 2 are built. Secondly, the increased traffic for people with businesses on Gray Bar Road and McMillan Way would be significant.
The merits of referral.
That's why I'm referring it back, because of traffic concerns. And then Mr. McPhail pointed out that during construction, everyone would be coming through the east parking lot. So I'm concerned about construction affecting the businesses. And then again, on page 343, the build out being too significant of a change for what is there now. I think that we should support the marine industry and not threaten it. And that's why I refer it back to find better options that would maintain the marine industry and boatyard as it is.
Counselor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I won't be supporting the referral today. A number of those issues, I think, were actually addressed by the applicant at a planning committee meeting. The applicant stated that part of the reason he wanted to do some of this work is because the existing tenants and users needed more space, more capacity to do their businesses in, and that includes users of the marina. So my understanding is, much of the work was being done because the current tenants want more facilities, better access, and just more happening down there.
All right, I'm going to call the question on referral. All those in favor? Those opposed? So with the exceptions of Councilors Wolf and Day, everyone was opposed. The motion for referral is defeated. I'll call the question on the main motion. All those in favor? Those opposed? So it is carried with Councilors Wolf and Day opposed. All right, now there's a few items coming from the Finance and Corporate Services Division. First of all, is the 2021 annual report and the highlights. May I have a motion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Statement of financial information. May I have a motion? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the council remuneration and expenses. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And from the Planning and Development Division, this is to clean up a matter we dealt with a while ago, the endorsement of the UBC resolution. And the recommendation is that the resolution in support of an increase to the maximum rent ceilings and monthly payment amounts through BC Housing Shelter Aid for Elderly Renters program, as outlined in attachment 1 of the report that's referenced there, be endorsed and forwarded to the Union of BC Municipalities for consideration during its 2022 convention, and I would so move. Moved and seconded. Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I support whatever we can do in the spirit of the resolution and report. But I guess my question is, are we asking for enough? To be quite frank with you, we're going for, slightly up, and I mean, anything is better, don't get me wrong. But I'm looking at the amount, what is reasonable and what is needed in today's society. And that's my only question. Can this be amended on the floor of the UBCM and offer suggestions of amounts?
Well, it can. The resolution that we would approve if this goes through urges the government to provide increases.
Right.
It doesn't say exactly how much that is.
Well,
and
they give
also
the example of what they're giving now is, I guess, they could give another $10 a month and, wow. My concern is somehow we could ask for significant improvements on the government to really look at this program. And this would be for everybody in the province of British Columbia, not just our own people. That was my only concern. I'd like to be a little more stringent and lay it on the table, and I hope other municipalities see it in the same manner.
if it can be amended on the floor of the convention.
Yep, I will be supporting it. Thank you.
All right. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. I'm thrilled to pieces to support this resolution to increase the maximum rent ceilings for seniors, or as they call it, elderly renters. Is there a way to add to this that they include more of the elderly renters to the program that are living literally on the poverty line? Because it seems like...
Well, that's not the idea of the resolution.
So it's just to have the people who are on the program, the SAFER program right now, to increase their rents, not to increase the amount of people eligible for these rent subsidies.
Well, I think this would have the effect of increasing the number who are eligible.
Where do you see that?
provide an increase to the maximum rent ceiling and monthly payment amounts. So if you're increasing the rent ceilings, then you're going to have more people involved.
Okay, well, I'll defer to you. I think maybe a letter to the minister asking that more people be included in the program might be in order.
Okay, with that, we're going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. No, somehow we've gone past announcements, or, no, we don't have announcements on here. So I've got some announcements, whether it's on the agenda or not. First of all, we've got the Stevenson Salmon Festival and Canada Day, and we're pleased to welcome back people to the Salmon Festival on July 1st for the first time since 2019. While the parade and the salmon barbecue are not back just yet, a number of the festival zones will be set up across the village with activities and displays to celebrate the rich history of the event. Visitors can enjoy the event stretching from Gary Point all the way to the Britannia Heritage Shipyards on foot, bicycle, scooter, wheelchair, or other forms of transportation. So go to stevensonsalmonfest.ca for all the details, and you'll find out all about it. And let's make a promise to everybody that we're going to be back with the parade next year. Then there's a Richmond Discovery Shuttle Bus. Tourism Richmond, the Richmond Hotel Association, and the city are pleased to welcome the return of the free Richmond Discovery Shuttle. The bus offers a round trip from Lansdowne Station via the Sheraton Vancouver Airport and the Richmond Olympic Oval to Steveston on weekdays and statutory holidays until September 5th. So if you want to get the timetable for that service, go to visitrichmondbc.com. That's visitrichmondbc.com. And finally, a question that nobody's too happy about is the property tax, which has a deadline of July 4th. So we want to give a reminder to the property owners that taxes are due on Monday, July 4th. And that really is by legislation a hard deadline. So we have to encourage you to get your money in. Tax notices were mailed out some time ago, and if you haven't received your statement, call the city's tax department immediately. Payments can be made online or in person through your financial institution. They can be made online by credit card through the city's website. They can be made by check either in the mail or the city's drop box, or in person during business hours, which is Monday to Friday, 8:15 a.m. to 5 p.m. Note that and this has been the case for a number of years, cash is not accepted at City Hall, including no cash in that drop box. And also, the provincial government is now responsible for all the homeowner grants in BC, so residential property owners must apply for their grant online at gov.bc.ca/homeowner grant. A 5% penalty will apply to taxes not paid by July 4th. There's no elasticity on that date. So for more information, go to the city website or call us at 604-276-4125. Now, the final item that I have to announce is that this really is a very significant meeting that we have had here because our longtime Chief Administrative Officer, George Duncan, who is here tonight, this will be his last council meeting. For those of you who are wondering about the history of this individual, he started in 1987 as a physical plant maintenance worker. The next year he was a supervisor. 2 years later, he was the manager of administration and building services, followed in 1992 as the director of civic buildings. And then in 1995, he was the Public Works Administrator, followed by the CAO in 1997. Now, you will remember probably, or you may remember, that he did take a sabbatical there for a year in 2002, but the next year he was right back with us where he belonged. His list of accomplishments is incredibly long. And so obviously, I'm not going to try and outline every nook and cranny of that kind of a record, but it is so significant when you consider the community in 1997 and the community today, in terms of size, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of cultural diversity, in every single way, this is a different community than it was way back then. And to think that this person has risen from a fairly entry-level position, within 10 years, he's the CAO of the organization, is really a tribute to the talents of this special individual. Now, when you look around and you see the city, you see parts of his legacy everywhere. He started off in the buildings in a big way with the Library Cultural Center when he was going through major renovations and things weren't going right. He stepped in and he basically rescued the program. There's the new City Hall. There's the Oval, and that includes our entry into the long track speed skating as a venue for the games, and then all the Olympic activities that were around the city. He had a huge part in the obtaining, shall I say, and the development of the Canada Line project. More recently, there's a Minaroo Center for Active Living. A number of the community centers have either been renovated or, in Stevenson's case, for instance, it's being rebuilt. We have new city center, community center. We're going to have the Capstan City Center. He mostly rebuilt all the fire halls. One or two were renovated to bring them up to seismic standards, but basically they've all been rebuilt. The police station, which was next to us, was then moved after the Olympics. It was moved to number 5 Road, and it's now supplemented with the City Center Police Office. Those are just a few of the many infrastructure developments for which our CAO has been responsible for. But it goes further than that. And again, time limits me as to what how much I can go into it. But I think that staff would agree. We have a very strong staff, right from the entry level right through to the senior management. And a lot of that is because of this man's his focus on training and mentorship and having people doing the right things in the right places at the right times. So our next Chief Administrative Officer, I'm sure you know Serena Lusk, she comes through the ranks, and that's just one indication of the very strong staff that we have, and a big part of George's legacy is that staff that that he has trained and motivated and made a part of the city of Richmond. So on behalf of the City Council, I want to say thank you to George Duncan on behalf of everybody. You have a tremendous legacy. We're going to miss you. It's been an unbelievably great run, and you've done a fantastic job, so congratulations. From all. Not to put you on the spot, do you want to say anything, George?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd forgotten about some of those things. I do really appreciate those comments. I'll keep it really short by simply saying it's been an absolute honor and privilege and a highlight of my career to have worked for the city of Richmond. I've never had a day where I didn't look forward to coming into work the next day. And the people who I've worked with they've just made it a completely unbelievable experience. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Yep, thanks for everything, George. All right, because you can't follow that.